Greetings, I come to you tonight to inform you that the system which you love so much, is collapsing around you. Corporate interests have so dominated government that the average Joe has no chance at making a difference on a national level, and while on the small scale democracy still works, at a national level, our democracy is a joke. A cruel joke played on the American people in hopes we won't recognize that a coup d'etat had slowly taken place over half a century. Corporate money is what gets candidates elected, because without it, many candidates are relegated to being nobodies, unless they are independently wealthy. And that usually means they are just another part of the corporate political machine. Furthermore, capitalism itself is showing the cracks in its foundation, its fundamental flaws that the socialists have been warning about, for over a century now. The supply and demand nature for the price of goods does not exempt workers' wages. Being that the average worker is in a skill class that is eternally in high supply, their wages are therefore artificially low. Additionally, the nature of capitalism is to move wealth to smaller and smaller factions. In ages past these were divided along national borders, and America, Europe, and Japan thrived in this environment at the expense of the rest of the world. Now that is no longer sustainable and the internal concentration has begun. Over the last 30 years the real adjusted wages of the average American have fallen, while the real adjusted wage of the controlling class has more than tripled. This all on the backs of the workers. And now that the people have begun to wake up, the government is putting into place laws like the NDAA, the SOPA, and giving them ambiguous language which could possibly be used to violate the Bill of Rights. What most people think is that due to this ambiguous language they are still safe. However, with a single cabinet meeting the Secretary of Defense can make the claim that citizens are subject to indefinite detention. Yes, even though the bill appears on the surface to protect the citizens, it is worded so vaguely and cleverly that, if one reads it a different way, it only pertains to the way that law enforcement personnel can interact with citizens, mentioning nothing about the military detention that is in question, and certainly not actually protecting the people like most believe it does. So what does this mean? It means that at any time they deem fit they can unseal these hidden laws and shred the Bill of Rights, if they deem it necessary for their interests. They cleverly disguised it, so that we would not rise up against them, while they did this, and yet they can at any time. Especially, if we stand up and demand our rights back. This is not the first time these series of events have unfolded. A false enemy was once used in the past to instill fear in the public and get the public to give up their rights to be safe. The government then passed an act that was very similar to the NDAA, which was only to be effective for 4 months. It was in reality used much longer. The place was Germany, the time was the 1930s. Yes, this was how Hitler rose to power and the tyranny of the Nazis began. I am not saying you should be in the street rioting, I am not even saying you should be at one of the Occupy Wall Street protests. I am merely warning you that the Democrats and the Republicans are not your friends. That our democracy is not a spectator sport. That we must band together to vote these people out whom seek to destroy our civil liberties, and get rich on the backs of the poor. These next 10 years will be a defining moment in human history, as the entire world is either saved, or plunges headlong into hyper-capitalism, simply another name for fascism. You matter, your vote matters. Get out, and vote. If you don't, you have no one to blame for your own imprisonment but yourself. We are the people. We have our rights. We will not let them go. For freedom.